Hey, so maybe you found this video after finally hitting AR 45 and have begun farming artifacts for your characters to make them, well, not horrible. Or you're just looking to expand your knowledge on what artifacts to keep and which to scrap. Either way, you're in the right place. While I wish I could offer you just a simple solution, artifact farming is different for every character. Some characters need more HP, some characters need more defense, and others you just stack crit rate, crit damage, and they just kinda work. The goal of this guide is to give you the tools to identify which artifacts you should level and which ones you should just toss.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Before you even begin farming for artifacts, you need to know not only what artifact set you're going for, but what main stats and substats you need for your characters. The best place to find this information is kachingmains.com. I'll leave a link in the description for you guys. They have guides for almost every character in the game that contain information needed to take your little itty bitty numbers to big numbers. Search for what character you're trying to build, go to the artifact stats menu, which will tell you the main stats and substats you need, and then make your way to the artifact set menu that will offer you options for what artifact sets will work best with your character. Something to keep in mind though is that you don't always need to pick the best set for your character, and I always recommend players use sets that are within their means, as sometimes spending months farming for artifacts isn't worth the damage increase. The guide tells you how much ER we need to aim for to get the most out of her, depending on the team comp she's in. And we also see that we need to focus on her HP or ER for her Sands, HP for her Goblet, and crit rate or crit damage for her Circlet. The guide lists that we want to prioritize ER until we hit our requirement, and then focus on crit rate and crit damage, and then HP percent, and then flat HP. Venturing to our artifact set section, we see that we either want to use 4-piece Golden Troop or 4-piece Tenacity. The guide notes recommend Golden Troop though, as it gives her a significant buff to what she brings to the team. Keep in mind when you're dealing with any character that depends on crit rate and crit damage, you want to stick with your 1-to-2 ratio. This means if you have 50% crit rate, you should aim for at least 100% crit damage. Once you get to around 70 to 80% crit rate, you can drop your 1-to-2 and focus on crit damage. So now you know what artifact set and the stats you're looking for, but just because you found a good artifact with the main stat and maybe a few substats you need, doesn't mean that it will work out. Learning what to roll and what to scrap takes time, but keep in mind it never hurts to roll the dice, as you can feed a piece that doesn't work out into another piece for a slight experience loss. Here we have 2 feathers, so we don't have to worry about the main stat since feathers always have flat attack, but we see that their substats are widely different. These artifacts are some that I got while farming for Zhao's set, so we know that we need to be prioritizing crit damage and crit rate, attack percent, and ER for him. Looking at the substat priority for Zhao, without any more analysis, the clear option would be the artifact on the left with crit rate. But it isn't that simple. I would argue that the artifact on the right has more potential, as it has both attack percent and ER, with a spare substat roll that could be favorable for Zhao. The reason why the artifact on the left isn't as good is because it only has one subset that we want, and the other slots being filled with basically junk. While you could get lucky and roll all into that crit rate subset, the chances are slim, and you will get much more out of the artifact on the right. Lastly, I want to note that even if you have an artifact with amazing substats needed for your character, it could roll poorly into several unneeded substats. Many a time have I had artifacts ruined by 2, 3, even 4 rolls into flat HP. If that happens, don't be afraid to let the piece go. The hardest part of building a character isn't just finding the right artifacts, but keeping balance in your character. Lean too heavy into attack percent and your crit rate will be too low to proc, and your crit damage will be negligible. Prioritize crit rate and crit damage too much, and your character could face energy problems and a lack of attack. With most guides on Kaching mains, they list general numbers that you want to aim for in your stats, so it's important to get close to those recommendations as possible before leaning into any extra increases. Make sure to factor in what weapon you're using with your character, as they could have their own substats that could ease the trouble in developing your character. For example, on my Zhao, I use Deathmatch, which gives him a 35.1% increase in crit rate before artifacts, so I don't need to lean too heavily into crit rate, allowing me to maximize my other stats. While I wish I could grant you all the perfect stats for your characters, that's just not realistic. A lot of the time you will be lacking in one area, and that's okay. While you should always keep farming to improve your characters, it's okay to settle when you get to a spot where your character is functional and able to clear enemies. Guides are meant to give you a rough idea of what you need to prioritize when building a character, and are by no means the law when it comes to building your character. In short, if you chase perfection, you will never be satisfied, as Genshin Impact is a game of luck where it could take months just to get a workable set, let alone years to reach perfection. To bring this video to a close, I want to provide you with one more tool and a very important graphic for calculating how effective your crit rate and damage are. Genshin Optimizer is the tool that lets you import your artifacts in your inventory and gives you a rough idea of what your best and worst artifacts are. This could be useful in determining which artifacts should go on your mains and which can go on your sub DPSs or other characters. The graphic shown here is used for calculating what is called crit value. Crit value gives you a rough idea on how good an artifact is by taking your crit damage and adding it to your crit rate multiplied by 2. The higher the number, the better the artifact is. Keep in mind, crit value should not be used as a rule for what artifacts to keep and which ones to throw out, as other important substats like energy recharge are not reflected in crit value. So to summarize, first you need to determine what main stats and substats you're looking for, then identify what artifact set you are farming for, and finally determine which artifacts are going to the trash and find the ones that you're going to keep and roll to see how they turn out. With all that being said, that brings a closing to the video. I want to thank you for sticking around, and I really hope that you pulled something useful from this video. Whether this is your first introduction to artifact grinding, or if you're a returning player just looking to get a more solid step-by-step basis on how to determine what artifacts are good and which ones you can sacrifice. Quickly, I just wanted to talk about the future of this channel. I actually want to start putting out videos more often, mostly on Genshin content. I'm going to be aiming for 1 to 2 times a week, maybe 3 times. It depends on my workload as I am a college student. I'm also going to be attempting to go for monetization, so if you guys could help out with that, like and subscribe, it would really mean the world to me, as monetization isn't exactly an easy thing to get with all the watch hours you need and the subscribers. So I wish you guys the best, take care, and cheers.